So guys, as you can see, we have taken apart the front of the car. There was a good reason for this. The front of the car had been taken apart at one point, whether or not the wings were replacements or something, but whoever put them back before had welded it terribly at the back, and then at the front we had a gap, quite a bad gap, and they dotted weld in the gap, so there was big splodges of weld all the way down both sides. So you can see I've repaired some of it. Had to repair the edges, as you can see there's bits missing. But when we got to the wings, what we also found was this lip here is correct, and then there was a sharp cut, and then there was another radius here. But what they'd done, for whatever reason, they've cut off this flange here, plus about 10mm, and then just folded it over to make a lip. Now, the reason for this might be to do with clearance for wheels. We don't know at this stage because obviously the car's not back together. But what I'm going to do at this point, just so things are all lining up correctly with the bodywork, is I've reattached a piece all the way down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a new flange, and then basically marry this all back up again. Because once we made all this, it was all lining up much better. As you can see how bad that really was. Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. So we've done this on both sides. Obviously seen the wee repair there. We've also done the bit on that side as well. You see it. Just a wee bit more welding to do, wee bits of it's not penetrated as well, so I'm trying to put not as much heat into some of the panels because I don't want to be wrecking them. Sometimes if you've got good metal on good metal, it's great, and you can penetrate right through with a slightly higher setting, but sometimes what's happening is it's just blowing holes because the material is a lot thinner. So sometimes you just need wee touch-ups on the opposite side if you can. But we're going to try and get all this fixed today, and then get the front back together, and then it's the next step to really get into the front of the car. So that'll be good. It'll be fun. So 2 days of working on the car, and we decided we would take the front of the car out of storage, which was basically just round the back under a tarpaulin. And yeah, it was a mess. I couldn't remember when obviously I first took it off how bad it was. Someone has obviously cut bigger lights out here, but when I took it off, someone had filled it with fiberglass to make for smaller lights to fit. So fiberglass came out both sides, so I might need to refill those areas. There was holes basically all over the car, pop rivets, all sorts of stuff, and it was terrible. It was all dented, it was all pulled out of place. It was certainly bad. We basically split the wing of the front of the bumper here, and the reason for that is I could actually fit my finger in the gap. It was that wide, all the way around, and it was terrible. It was really bad repairs, real bad welds. So what we did is we took it all back, repaired it, and best we can obviously, and now the gap is pretty much, as you can see, it's pretty good now. So I've still got the other side to put on. There was a strange occurrence where someone had actually turned up the edge here. As you can see, this continues on from here. We also had to put this edge on here as well. So there was lots of stuff that was just pulled out of place, knocked round, I don't know whether that's for wheel clearance or not. I don't know yet. I've got 13-inch wheels for this car, so we'll see how that goes. But I want to try and get this back to where it needs to be, and then worry about clearance and so forth later on, because obviously then we can work on areas. But I'd rather repair it just now, where I believe it's close to what it needs to be. But yeah, it was an absolute mess. So yeah, that's it. On to the next. So guys, we have here a radius arm repair kit. This gives you all the pieces for the replacement of the pin and the components for the radius arm. So you get the pin, you get a roller bearing, you have your, what would you call this, Andy? A brass bushing bearing. Then you've got obviously your washers. Now, if you actually look at the washers, this will show you that there's actually two different sizes, so keep this in mind when you're actually doing this, because one side is bigger than the other, so that you can get these little collars on correctly to obviously keep the grease in. Also you get a couple of nuts, and you also get your grease nipple as well. So I'll quickly show you the wee tool we made. So basically I had some screwed rod. This is, what size?
12mm.
This is 12mm screwed rod. As you can see at the end, there is an old socket that's actually been put on here, and what we did is we welded this on, and then we've actually grounded this back so that we have a kind of diameter that was actually fit the radius arm. So if you have a look here, this will actually go through, and this allowed us to knock through the bearing and the bushing right out. So basically we went right through rather than obviously pulling, as you probably should. But it all worked. Now we're also using this to place in the bushings and the bearings. So we'll basically go the opposite direction. And then we are, obviously the bushing or the bearing would be in there. This would sit against the edge, and then we would then just crank it up with a nut, and we're utilising one of the washers that was obviously from the original radius arm pin. So and that just allows it to compress. So very easy tool to use, been very handy. So just a thought if anybody is going down the same route. This was what size
I think it started off as a 19 across the flats.
Yeah, 19, and then we basically just kept grinding it back until it basically was able to dry through. You might be able to use a slightly smaller socket, but this one kind of was one that was lying about, and it's been pretty handy. So as you can see, what we've done is we've placed the bushing into position, and we've just tapped it in slightly just so it's placed. Then we use one of the washers and our tool, which obviously travels through, and we get to the bottom, and we've got another washer here, and obviously a nut. And all that happens at this point is basically we just stick our tool on, and then we just slowly crank it down. So as you can see, guys, we've got the bushing in, and basically this needs to be reamed out. Might want to tighten up your, that's it, Andy. And basically reaming this out. Now this reamer is a 19 to a 21 expandable. So basically we're just taking our time with this and slowly reaming it out, and obviously keep continually looking at the pin to make sure that we're the right size. We've got a fair idea of where we need to be now after doing the first one. But this is just a take your time exercise, no rushing this one. Slowly rotating the reamer back and forth, and then obviously expanding it as we go. Now, as you can see, Andy just broke it. So guys, just doing a wee bit of paint prep. It's not until you actually start to see dents. Well, fair enough, I'm going to be doing some work to these, but it's amazing how much dent you can actually see in the sunlight. This one as well has all been painted. I'm going to just paint the inside. There's a bit of touch-ups to do. There's some of the paint's a bit shitty, but yeah. So I'm just going to quickly show you this, guys. These are heritage brackets I've had to purchase, and the reason for that is everything was out of line. So at first we thought there might be a bracket problem, but what we discovered is the top hole that was up here for this particular nut was actually been altered. In other words, this was actually away over here, so we're about 13mm out of the actual centre of where we needed to be. So what we've had to actually do is basically weld a plate in to actually get this into the correct position. Now, also what happened is, if you look here, someone had actually slotted the hole where obviously the radius arm goes into, and you can see because this didn't fit, what they've done is they've slotted here to make the radius arm fit, which makes the geometry of the radius arm totally off. So what we've done is we basically mocked up basically a string line so that we can find the centre and actually figure out where the end of the radius arm needs to be, so everything's in a straight line. Now what we're going to have to do is obviously probably cut a bit of this out and actually weld a new plate in here with the correct hole so that everything fits. So at the moment we've basically made these little plates up, but because obviously of the thickness of the end of the radius arm, this obviously needs to go up against the subframe, so that'll be flush up against the subframe. We'll possibly have to weld up you know, these two plates to fit inside the actual gap here. So we'll mock all this up and we'll weld it all in, and obviously we'll have the centre point of where the radius arm needs to be, and that's on both sides. So we've got this issue on both sides. We've had to create the correct placement for this nut because someone has bloated the subframe. Excuse the noise in the background, guys. There's some work getting done in the house. But as you can see, we've basically created a bigger hole here. The reason for that is this was slotted because whoever had done it before, it was all misaligned, so this was not parallel with the radius arm. Now what we've done is we've basically welded two washers together, and that's obviously going to be fitting in there. Now we basically fitted the bracket on this piece, run a string through so they're all parallel from each side to each side, so these are centralised. Now as you can see on that one, it's already been done, and it's already been finished on the secondary side. As you can see there, it's all nice and new, so it looks good, and it's just a case of fitting this in once I've got it ground out a bit more, and once that's fitted in, we realign it, make sure it's in the centre. Sorry, you won't be able to see because of my hand, and we'll see, make sure it's fitting in the correct position. As you can see, guys, if you can, so that is now the patch welded in with the hole parallel to the bracket, and same on the other side. You can see that. And what we'll just do is I'll tidy that up, and yeah, that should be it. Fun and games. So guys, we have a problem. So this side fitted in, as you can see, it's hanging up and it's all fitted in. Now, once we'd actually put in the centralised positioning of the hole with the bracket, we found there was an issue, and the issue is that the distance between here and here for the radius arm was basically a washer. So these thrust washers that you can see on this tool that we've made, so that thickness was stopping us from aligning everything, really. So what we're having to do, because we've got this amount of material that is too much, it must be the tolerances between all the parts, obviously the new pins, the washers, etc. It's just mounted up and it's not right. So as you can see, the bracket fits on correctly, right? So what we're going to do is we've got a metal cutting tool here. We've got some screwed rod. We've welded the nut on the end, as you can see, and we've used two old thrust washers to centralise the tool, and basically we'll tighten that up. And what we'll do is we'll then cut a hole within that material. As you can see, we're utilising the threaded rod here. We'll cut that through, and then what we'll do is we'll recess that back the distance of the washer and allow the actual arm to fit in that area. Because we don't have the facility to machine out that material on the washers, this is the best option we've got. Because we've got that amount of material, the arm is never going to fit in correctly. This is probably why everything was bent and the holes were all off, and you know, everything was off, because what's happened is I've actually blutered this whole thing because I've never been able to get it to fit. So it's probably the modern tolerances of the materials that are getting made. The other side fits. The other side, as you can see, is in. It's fitted. But what we're going to do is we're going to get this cut. So we'll just stick a drill on the end here, and we'll just get this cut through. And then what we'll do is we'll take one and probably a plate, heavy plate, and what we'll do is we'll recess that, the thickness of that washer, and that will, hopefully the arm and everything will fit in. It'll be welded in, obviously, and hopefully we'll be where we need to be. So just quickly show you what I've done. So you've seen the tool. So as you can see, it's quite a dramatic hole, but the reason for that is that the whole part of that radius arm needs to actually fit in here, because of the thickness of the washers is determined the distance between here and obviously where the bracket ends, because we're basically about 4mm too thick, really, for it all to fit in place. So because we can't machine down really the washers, what we've done is we're basically recessing this. So what we've done, as you can see, is we've basically cut out the centre. So it's basically a big die, and we've made a plate up, and the plate is the right size for. Let's just get this off, and I'll just drop it on the floor. And if we put the plate up against, and you see obviously this fits. Now what will happen now is this will get welded. This, by the way, this is all being centralised. This will be welded in place there, and it'll allow that recess to the radius arm. Now how I centralise this is basically I put a steel plate up against it, put the die back in, because this has already been centralised, and basically drill a hole, and then we drill that out. As simple as that. So all I need to do now is just weld that in place, and that's us. So guys, as you can see, that is now in place, and it is very welded, because I made sure of it. You can see back there, well. So it's solid, and what that does, that recess allows the correct amount of depth for the bracket and the radius arm to fit, because obviously we've got the washers, which are the difference. As you can see now, all fits. All because the thrust washers are slightly too thick. So guys, I'm just going to quickly show you the tool we made up to cut out basically the slot, so that we could recess the radius arm, and I can see how thick the part of the radius arm was. So we had this metal cutting tool, 41mm, and all we did was we had a length of threaded rods, and put that through the centre with a nut, and we welded, just tacked on, I don't know if you'll see that in there, so that the nut didn't move, and we also just tacked on this side so the weld didn't move, stuck a drill in the end, and then just slowly utilised a drill to cut this, basically this piece out. Now what we did then is made obviously up a piece of steel, which relative to the thickness of this. I put the piece of steel at the back, made sure it was all steady, and then I placed this back in, because I already centred this with a string line from side to side, and I just basically retapped the hole in the piece of steel and welded it all back in. And as you can see, you know, these are all now fitting correctly. And it's quite interesting when you look online and you see the amount of people who've actually had the same issue, where they're basically either attacking the brackets or they're finding out the same issue I'm having, whereas the pins or the thrust washers, basically the thickness of a thrust washer is actually fouling the whole thing, basically putting the whole thing out of position, which is about 4mm, I think it is. You know, so it's quite a thick piece of material. But yeah, it's all fitting perfectly now. It's all swinging correctly. Yeah, we're in a much better place. It's all perfectly aligned. So I'm happy.